I was sitting at my kitchen table when the phone rang. I wasn't expecting any calls, so I picked it up with a slight sense of curiosity. "Hello? Is this Mr. Daniels?" a formal voice asked. I nodded, even though they couldn't see me. "Yes, this is he. This is Janet from the law offices of Turner and Associates. I'm calling to inform you that your late uncle, Frank Daniels, has left you an inheritance." I felt the ground shift beneath me. My Uncle Frank had been the closest thing to family I had left. He'd raised me when my parents died, and his property, the land I'd spent countless summers on, meant everything to me. The thought of losing it, even though he had passed months ago, made my stomach tighten. What did he leave me? I barely managed to ask. "The land on Magnolia Road, the one you visited during your childhood," she said, her tone clipped. "It's yours now. The papers will be ready for you to sign in a week." I hung up, my mind reeling. That land. It wasn't just dirt and trees to me. It was history, my family's legacy. The memories of my uncle's old farmhouse, the peaceful mornings, the smell of fresh-cut wood. It was a part of my soul. I couldn't wait to see it again. It had been years since I'd last been there. The next morning, I drove out, anticipation building inside me. The roads leading to the property were lined with oak trees, their branches sweeping overhead like protective arms. I smiled as the familiar view greeted me. But as I turned onto the familiar dirt road that led to the land, my heart stopped. A bulldozer. A giant, mechanical beast, its arm raised high, tearing through the dense thicket where the old oak tree used to stand. The clearing, a place I remembered as untouched, sacred, was being flattened. I slammed on the brakes, my tires kicking up dust. I couldn't believe it. I threw open the door and stormed toward the workers, the heat of the day pressing in on me. "Hey! What the hell are you doing?" I shouted, my voice trembling with anger. The workers barely looked up, too busy with their tasks. One of them, a young man, probably in his 20s, paused, then shrugged. We've been hired to clear this land," he said, clearly uninterested in me. "By who?" I demanded. The young man scratched his head. "I'm not sure. Some guy. Big project or something." I could feel my pulse racing. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but the reality was that I had no authority here. I wasn't even sure what the laws were regarding inherited property like this. I turned to walk back to my car, but the worker's voice stopped me. "You should probably check with the local development office. Might be some zoning changes or something." I couldn't even reply. Instead, I got into my car and drove away, the dust still settling around me like a suffocating fog. I knew I had to figure out what was going on. This wasn't just some simple development. It was my family's land, and if someone was trying to take it, if someone had already taken it, I wasn't going to let them. This was just the beginning. I spent the next few days trying to get answers. I reached out to the local zoning office, the developers, even the city council, but every call was met with resistance. No one had answers, or if they did, they refused to share them. Something wasn't right, and I knew it. One afternoon, I decided to visit the property again. I figured if I could get someone to talk to me face to face, maybe I could uncover something. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw her, Vivian Powell, the HOA president. She stood near the construction site, clipboard in hand, barking orders at the workers. I couldn't hold back. I marched right up to her. "Vivian, what's going on here?" I demanded, my voice sharp. She turned to face me, her expression cold, eyes narrowing slightly. "Mr. Daniels," she said, her tone dripping with condescension, "I've been expecting you." "Expecting me?" I repeated, trying to keep my voice steady. "This is my family's land. What are you doing to it?" She took a step closer, her smile thin and mocking. This land has been sold. You're a little too late to stop it. The developers have the permits. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Sold? Who sold it? My uncle, he never. Your uncle, she interrupted, was a man who didn't know how to manage his property. It's not about what he would or wouldn't do anymore. The land is ours now. You need to accept it. I clenched my fists. You can't just take it. There are laws. My uncle had an agreement with the town. This land was never for sale. Vivian laughed softly. Laws are flexible when you know the right people. And I know the right people. So, you can either get out of the way or face the consequences. It's that simple. Her words hit me like a slap. I felt a rush of heat in my chest, but I swallowed it down, trying to stay composed. It was clear now, Vivian was behind this. She had orchestrated the entire thing. She'd manipulated the situation, using her connections to take something that wasn't hers. I stared at her for a long moment, trying to process everything. You're the one behind this, aren't you? You're the reason this land is being developed. You've been pushing these developers for months, haven't you? Vivian didn't flinch. I'm doing what needs to be done for the neighborhood. Not everyone can keep up with progress. You should be grateful for the opportunity to move on. I was seething now, but something in her demeanor told me she wouldn't back down. She wasn't going to listen to reason. She was the kind of person who thought she was untouchable. And I hated that I felt powerless against her. This wasn't just about the land anymore. This was about justice. About righting the wrongs. And I wasn't going to let her get away with it. Not now. Not ever. I'm not going anywhere, Vivian, I said through gritted teeth. And neither is my land. She gave a bored shrug. We'll see about that. I watched her walk away, her heels clicking sharply against the gravel. But I didn't feel defeated. I felt something stir inside me, an unshakable resolve. Whatever it took, I was going to fight for what was mine. I spent the next few days buried in research, hoping to make sense of what I was up against. The more I looked into property laws, the more tangled and impossible the situation seemed. I couldn't just sit back and let Vivian have her way with my family's legacy. There had to be something I could do. I pored over legal documents, zoning codes, and property rights regulations, trying to make sense of the land deal. The more I dug, the more I uncovered fraudulent signatures on land surveys, falsified documents, and evidence of bribery among local officials. It was clear. This wasn't just a case of a greedy developer, this was a web of corruption. Vivian had orchestrated everything, and the developers were just the puppets. My uncle's land was just another piece of property for them to exploit, to bulldoze for profit. It felt like a punch in the gut. I had to fight back, but I wasn't a lawyer. I didn't know how to take on a developer with deep pockets and a corrupt network of officials backing them. I decided to seek out legal advice. I called up a local attorney, one who had come highly recommended by a friend of a friend. The moment I walked into her office, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, I had a chance. Mr. Daniels, I've reviewed the details of your case, she said, settling into her chair. She had a calm, professional demeanor, but I could see the concern in her eyes. You're dealing with a complicated situation here. Vivian Powell has a lot of influence. The developers she's working with are well connected. Their lawyers are some of the best in the business. I leaned forward, my frustration mounting. I don't care about their lawyers. This is my land, and it was taken from me. I'm not letting them get away with this. She held up a hand, her expression softening. I'm not saying you shouldn't fight. But you need to understand the power they have. You're up against a lot. I'm here to help, but you're going to need more than just legal advice. You'll need resources, time, money, connections. And right now, I'm afraid you don't have that. I wasn't naive. I knew what she meant. I had nothing compared to the vast network Vivian had at her disposal. Still, something inside me refused to back down. This wasn't just about me. This was about my family, my heritage, my future. The fire that had started in my chest when Vivian laughed at me was still burning bright. I wasn't going to let her win. I don't care if I'm outmatched. This isn't about winning for me. It's about doing what's right. I have to fight for this, for my uncle's legacy. She nodded slowly, as if weighing my words. I'll help you however I can. But be warned, this is going to get messy. The next few days were a blur. As I prepared for legal action, things started to take a dark turn. My car was vandalized, scratches on the paint, tires slashed. Then, notes started showing up on my doorstep, threats scrawled in red ink, "Stay out of the way, or you'll regret it." I thought about calling the police, but deep down, I knew they wouldn't help. Vivian's grip on this town was too strong. And then there was the constant feeling of being watched. I'd catch glimpses of someone in a car parked outside my house or hear footsteps trailing behind me. I was being followed. The intimidation was working. I felt like a small fish in a giant, ruthless pond. But there was something inside me that wouldn't let go. I wasn't going to give up. Every time I felt like quitting, I thought about my uncle, about the memories I had there on that land. This fight was about more than just property. It was about justice. And I wasn't going to back down. I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Every lead I followed just seemed to spiral into another dead end, but I knew I couldn't give up. One night, as I was going through my uncle's old papers, those dusty boxes I had been avoiding, I found it. A will. It was buried beneath other documents, tucked away in a folder labeled miscellaneous. My heart skipped a beat as I read the words. It wasn't the will I had expected. This one was dated 10 years earlier than the official one I had seen before. And it didn't leave the land to anyone but me. The real kicker? There was a clause in it stating that the land was never to be sold, not without my permission, and certainly not for development. The document I had seen before, the one the developers used to justify their actions, was fake. Someone had forged my uncle's signature. I sat there, staring at the paper, my blood boiling. I couldn't believe it. My uncle's legacy had been stolen, right under my nose, and I had been kept in the dark. I wasn't alone in this, though. I had to find the truth, and I had to confront Vivian. My hand shook as I picked up the phone. I had the proof, and I was ready to use it. The confrontation was inevitable. I drove to her office the next morning, a folder full of evidence clutched tightly in my hand. Vivian looked up when I walked in. Her cold eyes flicked to the folder I was holding, and she smiled smugly. Well, Mr. Daniels. You seem a little more prepared today." I slammed the folder down on her desk, watching as she glanced through the documents, her face slowly turning from confident to defensive. "You know what this is, don't you?" I asked, my voice barely containing the anger building inside me. "This is the real will. The one that proves this land was never supposed to be sold. And this," I tapped the forged document she had used to steal my family's land, "is a lie. You've been lying this whole time." Vivian's eyes narrowed, but she didn't seem surprised. "You're wasting your time, Mr. Daniels," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "I don't know how you got these papers, but it's too late. The land's gone. You're not going to stop it." I leaned forward, my fists clenched. "You stole from me. You stole from my family, from my uncle. I'm not just going to let this go." Vivian smirked. "People like you," she said, leaning back in her chair, "need to know their place. You think you can fight this system, this machine that I've built? You think you're special because you found a few old papers? You're nothing. Just a man with an old, useless piece of land. And if you keep pushing me, I'll ruin you. No one will believe your story. No one. I could feel my blood boiling, my heart pounding in my chest. She was threatening me, again. And it wasn't just the land now. This was about power, about her crushing anyone who got in her way. But this time, I wasn't backing down. You've made a mistake, I said, voice steady. I'm not going anywhere. And I will make sure everyone knows what you've done. I could see the flicker of doubt in her eyes for just a moment before she replaced it with a forced smile. Good luck with that. You're going to need it. I stood up, grabbing the folder from her desk and heading toward the door. As I opened it, I turned to face her one last time. I'll make sure everyone knows who you really are. And when this is over, you won't be able to hide behind your money and power. I left her office, the weight of everything I'd just learned settling over me. This wasn't just about my family's land anymore. It was about exposing Vivian and the whole corrupt system she was part of. I wasn't going to stop until I brought the truth to light. I had finally gathered enough evidence. It wasn't just the fake will or the forged signatures, there were emails, bank transfers, and other documents that linked Vivian directly to the fraudulent transfer of my uncle's land. The web of corruption she'd spun was becoming clearer by the day, and I was ready to expose it. But I couldn't do it alone. I reached out to a few neighbors who'd suffered at the hands of the HOA and Vivian's development schemes. People who had seen what was happening, who were fed up with the way Vivian had been running things. I'm with you, Mr. Daniels, said Greg, one of the neighbors who had been fighting Vivian for months over zoning issues. I've seen what she's doing, and it's not right. You get me that evidence, I'll stand by you. I felt a surge of hope. This was it. I was no longer a lone voice in the wilderness, I had support. The community meeting was scheduled for the following week. The room was packed, more people than I'd expected. Neighbors I didn't even know had come to listen. Vivian, of course, was front and center, her expression tight and defensive as she glanced around at the room full of people. I stood at the front, the folder full of evidence in my hand. The room fell silent as I spoke. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming, I began, my voice steady, though my heart was racing. I've gathered evidence that shows this development, this entire process, has been a lie. My uncle's land was stolen through fraud, through manipulation, and through corruption. And I'm here to make sure the truth comes out. I handed copies of the documents to the people sitting in the front row, making sure everyone could see what was at stake. Vivian's face turned red as she saw the evidence being passed around. You can't trust him, she spat, standing up abruptly. This is all fabricated. You don't know what he's talking about. He's just bitter because he's losing his land. I could feel the tension in the room rising, but I held my ground. I'm not bitter, Vivian. I'm fighting for what's right. And these documents, I slammed the folder down on the table, prove that you've been lying and manipulating people for months. You've been using your position to push through a development that no one agreed to. This land is mine. It always was. The room was quiet for a moment, and then Greg spoke up. I've seen what she's done, he said, his voice strong. She's been threatening us, manipulating the system. This isn't the first time she's tried to push people around. I stand with Mr. Daniels. One by one, others started speaking out, their voices rising in solidarity. Vivian's smug expression faltered, but she quickly recovered, narrowing her eyes at me. This isn't over, she hissed as she stormed out of the room, her heels clicking angrily against the floor. The legal battle had officially begun. And as I walked out of the meeting, I felt a weight lift from my chest. I wasn't the same person who had walked into that room weeks ago. The fight had changed me. I was no longer afraid. But Vivian wasn't going down without a fight. The next few days were a blur of court filings and phone calls, and just when I thought things were going in my favor, Vivian pulled a last-ditch effort. She used her connections in the legal system to delay the court process, claiming that my evidence wasn't admissible and that I had no standing in the case. I was furious. It felt like a crushing blow. But as I stood in the courtroom, staring at the judge, I realized something: I wasn't going to let this stop me. I turned to my lawyer and whispered, "We're not backing down, right?" "We're not," he said, his voice calm but firm. "The truth is on our side. We'll fight this, no matter how long it takes." I nodded, a new sense of determination flooding through me. Vivian had underestimated me. This was about more than just the land. It was about standing up for what was right, for exposing corruption, and for fighting until the end. And I wasn't going to stop now. It felt like I was living in a nightmare, but every day, I got closer to the truth. My legal team had been working tirelessly, combing through every detail, every scrap of information. And finally, they uncovered it, an email thread buried deep within the developer's records, hidden in the back pages of some forgotten folder. The emails were dated back several months. They were exchanges between Vivian and the developers, discussing the land, the plans, and, most crucially, how to push me out of my own home. The emails weren't just about shady business deals or exploiting loopholes. No, these emails were damning. They detailed how Vivian had coordinated with the developers to bypass the law and take control of my family's property, making it clear that my legal rights meant nothing to her. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. There it was, in black and white, proof that Vivian had been scheming all along, working behind my back to ensure I'd be left with nothing. She had manipulated the system, bribed officials, and now she was attempting to take my home. Armed with this, I knew what I had to do. I filed for an emergency injunction. This was it, the final push. The court had to take action now, before it was too late. The tension was palpable as the court date arrived. I walked in with my head held high, the documents in hand, ready to present the final evidence. Vivian was already seated at the front, her cold gaze fixed on me as she tried to play it cool. But I could see the tremor in her eyes, the flicker of fear that betrayed her confidence. When it was my turn, I stood tall, my voice steady, despite the nerves threatening to spill over. "Your Honor, I've presented all the facts, and the evidence is clear. Vivian Powell has been involved in illegal transactions, tampering with documents, and actively trying to push me out of my own home. She has manipulated every part of this process, including the law." Vivian shot to her feet, trying to interrupt, but I held up my hand. "No. I'm not finished." I could feel the fire in my chest, a fire that had burned for so long. "I'm not the only victim here. This has affected this entire community. People have been silenced, bullied, threatened. And all of this because Vivian wanted to make money off of land that wasn't hers to begin with." Her face twisted in anger, but I didn't back down. "Vivian," I said, my voice cutting through the room, "this is the moment when the truth comes to light. You've made a lot of people suffer for your greed. But this ends today." I could feel the weight of my words hanging in the air, each one laced with the years of frustration, the pain, and the injustice I had endured. And for the first time, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like I had finally taken control. The judge looked over the evidence, his expression stern as he nodded. "The court acknowledges the gravity of these findings. The developers' plans are hereby halted, and further action will be taken regarding the unlawful actions of Miss Powell and the developers." Vivian's face went pale. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. For once, she was speechless. The weight of her actions was finally being recognized, and there was nowhere left for her to hide. I stood there, not quite believing it. The road was far from over, and I knew that the fight wasn't done yet. But today, I had won. Vivian had been forced to face the consequences of her actions, and I wasn't backing down. Not now, not ever. For the first time, I felt the weight of justice on my side. It wasn't just a victory for me, it was a victory for everyone who had been hurt by her greed and manipulation. This was just the beginning. The courtroom was silent as the judge delivered his ruling. I could hardly breathe, my heart racing in my chest. It felt like everything had led to this moment, this one decision that would change everything. After reviewing the evidence presented, the judge began, his voice firm. It is clear that the actions of Vivian Powell and the developers were not only illegal but malicious. The land, which was fraudulently transferred, will be returned to its rightful owner at a reduced price. I stared at him, trying to process what I was hearing. The developers, Vivian's powerful friends, were being forced to sell the land back to me. My land. At a fraction of the cost. Vivian's face turned crimson. She shot a venomous look at me across the room, her lips tight. But I didn't flinch. This was it. I had won. Vivian Powell, the judge continued, you are to face the consequences of your actions. Your attempts to defraud Mr. Daniels and manipulate the legal system will be fully investigated. Your position in the HOA is hereby revoked, and further legal actions will be pursued. I didn't care about the rest of it. I had my land back. The community had been listening, had seen the truth. It was a hard-fought victory, but the victory was mine. And for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. After the ruling, I walked out of the courtroom, the air outside feeling different, clearer, like the weight had been lifted. My lawyer shook my hand, a smile spreading across his face. You did it. You really did it. Yeah, I said, the corners of my mouth twitching into a smile. We did it. As I made my way to the steps, I saw people gathering around, neighbors, friends, people who had been on the sidelines, unsure if they should get involved. Now they were all here, offering congratulations, shaking my hand, patting me on the back. Mr. Daniels, we knew you'd win, Greg, the neighbor who'd supported me from the start, said with a grin. You didn't just stand up for your land, you stood up for all of us. I nodded, my chest swelling with a pride I hadn't expected to feel. It wasn't just me. It was all of us. I glanced around at the crowd. This wasn't just a victory for me, it was a victory for the entire community. People who had been silenced by fear, people who had been bullied by Vivian, they were all here. Together, we had fought back. I found myself looking up at the sky, feeling the weight of everything we had gone through. It hadn't been easy. There had been moments when I wanted to give up, when the odds felt too stacked against me. But in the end, it was never about winning the case. It was about standing up for what was right, no matter how impossible it seemed. The journey had changed me. I had started out overwhelmed by fear, unsure if I could take on Vivian and the developers, but now I knew who I was. I had found a strength I didn't know I had, a conviction that pushed me to fight until the end. I turned back to the crowd, a smile tugging at my lips. This isn't just my win, I said, my voice loud enough for everyone to hear. It's ours. And for the first time, I felt like I was finally home. With the legal battle behind me, I stood on the land again. It felt different this time, more like mine than it ever had before. The bulldozers were gone, the threat of losing it was gone, and now, I could finally start thinking about what to do with it. I spent the first few days just walking around, letting it all sink in. My uncle's land. The land I thought I'd lost forever. It was no longer about defending my rights. It was about honoring his memory, his legacy. I knew exactly what I wanted to do with it. This place, this piece of history, would no longer just be a patch of earth. It would be something more, something that could benefit everyone. I reached out to the local community, trying to get their input on the idea. I wanted to turn the property into a community center. A place where future generations could come to learn, grow, and connect with their history. A place where they could understand the value of what it meant to stand up for what was right. "I think it's a great idea," Greg said when I explained the plan to him. He had been one of my biggest supporters, and his approval meant a lot. "This land has been through so much. It deserves something like this." "I agree," I said, feeling the weight of the decision. "It's not just for me. It's for everyone who fought with me. It's for the whole community." We began to organize the project, working with local officials and businesses to make it a reality. It wasn't easy. There were plenty of hurdles along the way, but this time, I wasn't backing down. This was about more than just restoring the land. It was about restoring trust, rebuilding what had been broken. I couldn't help but think about how much I had changed during this whole ordeal. When I first found out that Vivian and the developers had taken my uncle's land, I was overwhelmed. I didn't know where to start. I didn't know how to fight back against people with so much power. But now? Now I was different. I had learned that the fight for justice isn't just about the end goal. It's about the persistence to keep going, the courage to face challenges head-on, and the sacrifices you make along the way. As the plans for the community center began to take shape, I found myself thinking about the lessons I'd learned. About how it wasn't just about winning the case, it was about standing for what was right, even when it seemed impossible. And most importantly, it was about coming together. The community that once stood divided, afraid to speak out against Vivian's influence, was now united. "We're doing something good here," I said to Greg as we stood together, looking at the property. "This land isn't just mine anymore. It belongs to everyone now." He nodded. "And it's not just about the past, either. It's about the future. What we're building here will last." As we walked around the land, I realized that I wasn't the person I was when this journey began. I had fought for my family's legacy, and in doing so, I had found my own. The legacy I was building now was one of resilience, of community, and of standing up for what's right, no matter the cost. And as I looked at the foundations of what we were creating, I knew this was just the beginning. Sitting with my family, I feel the weight of everything we've been through pressing down on me. I look around the room, my wife, my kids. And for the first time in a long time, I don't feel like I'm fighting a battle I can't win. We're no longer just fighting for a piece of land. No, this is bigger than that. We're fighting for the future, for a better community, and for a legacy that cannot be destroyed. I glance at my wife. She catches my eye and gives me a small, reassuring smile. It's a smile I haven't seen in a while, and it gives me the strength I didn't even realize I needed. She knows how hard this has been for me. For all of us. But it's not just about the land anymore. It's about what that land represents, the promise of a future we almost lost, the belief that things can change if you fight for them. This place, it's ours again, I say, my voice thick with emotion. Not just the land, but everything it stands for. We didn't just win a legal battle. We've won the future. She nods, her eyes soft. It's more than that. We've reclaimed what matters, what we almost lost. I take a deep breath. The journey has changed me. When this whole thing started, I felt small. I felt powerless against Vivian, against the developers, against everything that seemed stacked against us. But now? I've learned that the fight for justice isn't just a legal battle, it's an emotional and personal one. It's about resilience, about standing up for what's right even when the odds are crushing. I've realized that it's not just about the documents, the lawsuits, or the courtrooms. It's about finding strength inside yourself and realizing the value of the support you have around you. My family, my neighbors, they've been my foundation. Without them, I never would have made it through. I stand up and walk toward the window, looking out at the land that once seemed like it would slip through my fingers. The bulldozers are long gone, and in their place, there's life. The land is thriving, the community is coming together, and I realize, for the first time, that it's no longer just about reclaiming property. It's about reclaiming my sense of self, my family's future, and the dignity that was stolen from us. Dad, my son says from behind me, is this where we're going to live? I turn to him, surprised by the question. Yeah, I say, smiling. This is where we're going to live. He grins. It looks better than I thought it would. I laugh. It sure does. The land we almost lost is now filled with possibility. It's no longer just a symbol of struggle. It's a symbol of victory, of unity, of rebuilding something from the ground up. As I stand there, with my family beside me, I realize how much I've changed through all of this. I'm not the same person who walked into that courtroom months ago, unsure if I could stand up against Vivian. I'm stronger now. I'm someone who understands the value of community, of resilience, and of never backing down. And I know this fight has been worth it, not just for me, but for all of us. We've reclaimed more than just land. We've reclaimed our future. I stand on the land that once felt like it was slipping through my fingers. It's different now, restored, transformed. It feels like a victory, but also like a beginning. The bulldozers are gone, the construction halted, and in their place, there's something far more meaningful. This land is a symbol of everything we've been through. It's a symbol of justice, of resilience, and of what happens when you refuse to back down. I let my eyes roam across the property, taking in the changes. It's not just about the community center anymore, it's about what it represents. A place where people can come together, a place where future generations can learn about standing up for what's right. A place that will remind them of the strength of the human spirit, even in the face of adversity. I think back on the journey. On everything I've lost and everything I've gained. It's been a painful road, filled with setbacks, frustration, and moments when I didn't think I could keep going. But I did. And so did my family. We all fought for this. For our future. And now, looking out at this land, I feel a sense of peace I hadn't expected. It's incredible, my wife says, standing beside me. What we've done, what we've built. I nod, my throat tight. We didn't just save the land, though. We saved each other. We saved what matters. She leans her head against my shoulder, and for a moment, I just stand there, breathing in the air that now feels full of possibility. You've changed, you know that, she says softly. You're not the same person who walked into that courtroom, unsure if you could win. You've grown. I smile, though it's bittersweet. I had to. We all had to. I think about everything that led me here, the fear, the uncertainty, the endless nights of worry. I've learned so much through this journey. I've learned that justice isn't just about winning a case, it's about standing firm in your beliefs, no matter how hard the fight. It's about understanding that sometimes the cost is steep, but the reward is worth it. And I've learned that strength doesn't come from winning, it comes from refusing to give up, from pushing forward when everything seems impossible. Looking ahead, I see so much potential. This victory isn't the end, it's just the beginning. The fight for justice, for a better community, for a future we can all be proud of, will continue. But this moment, this land, will always be a testament to what we've overcome. A testament to our strength, to our resilience, and to the belief that, no matter how tough it gets, doing what's right is always worth it. I take a deep breath, feeling the weight of it all settle into place. This is a new chapter, for my family, for the community, for me. And as I look at the land, I know one thing for certain, the legacy we're building here will last long after we're gone. It's a legacy of justice, of courage, and of never backing down.